Okay, so in this tutorial, I'm going to be talking about constraints and auto layouts in Figma, how they can help with our designs. Now, okay, so typically when you want to create uh, a website or a mobile app, you want to make it dynamic. Okay, so if it's a web, you want to also make it dynamic for mobile view and back and forth like that way. So I'll start off by creating a frame, and I'll choose desktop. I think I'll just take desktop for now. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to explain what constraints do and how they can be functional, and then I'm going to explain auto layout and tell you why using auto layout would be a little bit better than using the constraints alone. Okay, so let's say, for instance, I create, um, let's just say a nav uh, bar kind of stuff here. Okay, just making a duplicate here, make something like this. Okay, make another one here. Control D. Um, Probably just centralize all these three. Then just make something weird, not like really doing any serious design, but something that can make more clear for us to understand than just this one around this one. Circle. Okay, that's circle. And let's see how circle you can get. Um, 157 by 157. Let's do that. Perfect circle. And all right, so I'll just leave this hanging somewhere here. So just for easy identification, I'm just going to give them different colors, or we just use the same shade, uh, like blue. So I'll use blue, like shade of blue. Okay, so there's these different tints and shades of that same blue. Okay, just right here. Maybe I'm going out of blues here. Okay, so I think I'll just leave this one this color. Okay. All right. So let's see how constraints work. Zoom out a bit. So the way constraints work is if I expand this, you notice they are just hanging there and disappearing. Nothing really special is happening with them. So for responsive design, we want to have a scenario where we can stretch or squeeze our frames for desktop, mobile, or tablet size, and the elements inside should respond as well. So uh, using constraints, we could do that. So for instance, this top one, I want as increasing or reducing this, I want this sizing to remain the same. So what I'll do is on the properties here, I'm going to draw a rectangle in the properties. We have the constraints section here. So right now it's showing left, just by default, left for the horizontal, top for the vertical. So it's always going to be on top and it's always going to be on the left. So if I drag this to the left, it was always going to be on the left. Okay. I want to change that. I want it when I expand this, I want this to expand as well. When I squish it, I want it to squish as well, right? So for that to happen, we will use left and right. And watch what happens once I increase. It now responds with the page. It's reducing it to the page as well. So you can see all these options here. So let's say, let me create a phone, say iPhone 16 Pro for phone version. Let me just put the size of the phone version. Also, let me put the size for tablets. Let's use a normal tablet, with iPad mini. Okay, and we just put that one somewhere here. Okay, so I'm going to put this up. That's easy. Okay, so now with this, if I say I want to make this iPad size, see I've got the iPad, I didn't need to do anything on this guy. I just adjust it. When I go down to the phone level, adjust as well. So using constraints on the frame and on the elements can help frames being adjusted, help the elements to adjust as well. So what about these three? If I leave them, let's say this is left on top. What if I put this one right top and put this one center top? What will happen is when I increase, this will always remain on the right. This will always remain centralized on the paper. Okay, but when they are going in, they kind of fold within themselves. Okay. So to adjust or to adapt to what I'm trying to do as well to make these guys flow. Now for this one, same thing. I leave on the left for this one, I leave in the center, for this one I leave on the right. If I leave this one on the right, let's just change this one from left to right. Let's demo scale rather. Okay, so what happens here is when I go kind of scale out, right? When I come to input. Okay, so for iPad, kind of thinner, and if I go to the phone, become even thinner, right? So, okay, so that's generally how it works, and just get back. So the scale will help me adjust this guys and reduce their sizing as this one is increasing as well. So scale is what works. Left and right won't work for them because they're practically three different elements in the same level. But this one that has the right will always remain on the right and some will always remain on the left. Okay, so when I move this way, that one will always remain on the right while the blue one always remains on the left. Generally, that's how constraints work. And they're pretty good to an extent. They kind of work good. They kind of work good. So I'm just going to make another copy of this. Let's just Control V. Put that here. Okay. So that's constraints, right? When we're doing design, you want to have your element responsive to the frame. Okay, but there's something a little bit more interesting than that because this might not be what I want. Maybe in my design, when this folds, okay, rather than this guy squeezing up, I want them to fall back and become vertical and not remain horizontal. So that's where we will now shift from being constrained to use something like an auto layout so that this forces the elements to behave in a certain way. So generally, when applying auto layout in your design, what you are basically just doing is that auto layout is basically a frame that tells the elements inside it how they should act or how they should behave, right? So I'll just keep these guys back on their default uh, left so that you see that it doesn't really matter about the constraints. It just matters what we do. So generally for auto layouts, the first thing is we have to frame the elements, and auto layout works on frames, it doesn't work on shapes. Okay, so you have to create a frame and then the auto layout works. So like I said, It tells the elements within the design how, or within the frame, how they should act or how they should behave. So right now, this is a frame. This desktop is a frame. Okay, so this is the button for the auto layout. The shortcut is Shift and A on the keyboard. We want to make a non layout. So right now, if I just click Shift and A on this frame, Shift and A, notice a little bit of change occurred, right? So let me do it, undo that, and then you click on the button, you see it's get the same results. All right, so there happen to be some kind of changes. Now, because I had a lot of elements that lined up in different ways, it created a different kind of flow. So here in our auto layout panel, we have the flow for the free flow, we have the vertical flow, we have the horizontal flow, and then we have the grid. Now, I will talk about grid in a video. So, but I'm going to be with the auto layout for now. But generally, what grid does is it helps segment your design into a grid system, so it's more organized for you. So here, other Figma just identify the elements, the sizes, and create a grid out of them. So okay, so let's take it away from this. So I will shift it back to the horizontal, and then you see it kind of takes everyone horizontally. If I go back to the vertical, it makes everything vertical and so that's what the auto layout basically does for all this design. So let me undo all that. Let me undo all that before I add the auto layout. So it's actually making these guys behave funny. They are within the frame of it. So let's say let's just draw something here. I'll just draw a few boxes here. Okay, so if I create an auto layout with this, it arranges them in an order. Okay, and right now these are wrapped. So if I turn off the wrap, it kind of cuts off the next one, and the next one's kind of hidden somewhere. So what the wrap does is it kind of shows that when the spacing gets smaller than the size of the text, it kind of folds the element and drops it down. Okay, so this is actually another good way of doing, just like with the constraints, okay, of following up on our elements. Now, so that's generally with the auto layout, and you see this markers here, this blue stuff. This is the padding. That's the padding of the elements from the size, which can be adjusted though. This is the spacing between the elements, okay? And auto layout, what it does is it gives a generalized size to all the elements. So it doesn't give them different spacing, but all of them have the same spacing. So let's get back to the properties panel before I come back here. So if you could look at this, let me make this wider. We can look right here. Right. So we see we have the width of the frame, dimensions and height. And we have the gap. The gap is this guys here. So I can manually change the gaps, reduce them. Okay. I can do it from here. I can actually come in here and do it as well. Okay, so anyone that works best for you, it's fine. It's no actually. So this one is for a vertical gap. So if the two lines of elements. So let's say I make this one to this vertical gap here. So that's this one. So I can make that one different. So the vertical gap is different from the horizontal gap. Okay. All right. Now let's put that seven, seven, same with the horizontal one. Okay, so like I said, the padding now is this, that's from the elements to the margin part of the page, that's the edges of the page. So you can increase the padding level or decrease them vertically or horizontally. It just reduces what you want to uh, see, or let's say the constraint of where the element should not cross, right? So right now this pattern is here. So if I adjust this, nothing's gonna happen until you notice there's this kind of flicked red line that shows on this point here. When you go back, you see the quick line there. If I cross it, that guy drops because at that point the element became closer than the pattern set. So once that um, limitation is reached, the elements adjust. So it's more like an adaptive responsiveness there. And I can, right now, all the elements are set based on this alignment box here, the top left. So you can set them for top right. Okay, you can set them for center, and you can see how the element here is moving. You can put all of them for center, and all of them drop to be on the center, center left, center right, or you can do bottom left, bottom right, bottom center. So that's what this alignment aspect does, helps you arrange. So the trick about it is the frame has to be bigger than the elements to work for the alignment scene. Otherwise, the alignment won't see. So right now the frame is bigger. That's why you can see the alignment working. Okay. So just doing a quick overview of what these guys do, right? Okay, so now I was talking about how the auto layout works, and typically you want to make your elements inside the frame. You want to actually frame them, possibly even create an auto layout with them. So let's say, for instance, now I wanted to make within this page, maybe this is supposed to be a button, or this is supposed to be, yeah, this is now within the pictures, text. So let's say I want to make a button, for instance. Now, I normally would use a rectangle, okay, but sometimes I'm going to move the other layout from this guy, so don't get too much issues around. So I'll usually use a rectangle, but you can also create a button just by typing. So I'll just make that a big button. I'm going to break some laws here. Never use text is big. Okay. All right. So I want to make a button that will be responsive, like using the auto layout command. So the first thing I want to do is what? It's a frame. So rather than draw a frame out, I could actually just right click on the button and frame selection, or Control Alt G. So Control Alt G, and now have a frame. Okay, so and frames work just like shapes. Okay, I can add a fill color, so I'll just add fill color. Let's just make green. Oh, what is it? The blue. Let's add a blue. Yeah, that blue color button. Maybe make the text white or real. So I'll make the button a little bit darker, sharper. Right. So now I have a frame, a button frame. Okay, and you can see here it is a frame in your layers panel. This is a frame. It's not just text anymore. So it's within that frame we have our text. Okay. So now, because I've made this a frame, I can now add um, things to the frame. Like if I'm doing the rectangle, I could actually add rounded corners. Okay, to make the frame look like a button, but that's going to be kind of weird, because it's kind of entering into the button stuff. So what I will want to do to this frame to make it an auto layout and make it have the structure of the buttons, actually create an auto layout, right, for the button, and then I will add padding. So I could add padding, let's say a padding of 30 on the horizontal, and a padding of let's say 8. 8 is fine. So I have a padding of 8 and I have a padding of 30. Okay, so now this button is super responsive. Super responsive as it is already. Because of this pattern now, whenever something happens inside the button will be forced to extend. So for inside, I go into the texts. You can hold control and click on the elements and to go into the group or into the frame. So let's say I want to do something like type inside this button and do button extend. You can see as I'm typing, it's also increasing the length of the frame. Okay, so and done that off back. So, but if I didn't do the auto layout function on this, which turned off the auto layout, and I do the same thing, I click button extend, you see the text just goes outside of the button without being responsive. So that's why we'll use the auto layout. It kind of creates a super responsive behavior between the elements. Very nice, very easy to maintain. Okay. So ordinarily, right now you can't force the text to reduce in size, or once you get to the particular size that you're looking for, you can now reduce text manually. And in UI design, we have a basic or a more, let's say, uh, the best practice size for text and for buttons and for fonts and all that. So we'll cover that in another training. Okay, so that is using the auto layout for sizing texts. You can make text buttons like that, and it's worked well. Figma works with frames very well. Anything that's not a frame or that's not within a frame, Figma doesn't recognize it, so still works fine. All right, so another thing we'll talk about is when we are dealing with some shapes. Let's see something here. Let me move this guys together, them side by side. Okay. Um, I think I'll just make all of them width of 200 and yeah, let me get them all 200 and let's line them up. Okay, so I want to do something here. I'll come back here and turn on the auto layout. Okay, so now I want a situation where I want to explain how these guys work with there's something in resizing when it comes to design that has to do with hogs and fields and fixed heights and stuff. So let me first of all frame all of this. Frame selection, frame this selection, frame this selection. Like I said, they all work when they are frames. So now I'm going to apply the auto layout to them as well, each of these guys. So select him, apply the auto layout, select this, apply the auto layout, select this, apply the auto layout. So for uh, each of them, especially for the fill and for the fixed, is the element has to be in an auto layout already. Okay, so that's already been auto layout. So I think I should give this guy a different color so we notice the differences. That this is red on and let's see yellow. Okay. So now for this, I can tell it to be hug by by default is the default behavior of any button or any shape or any text, whatever elements that is being used. Hug is what happens when you write something inside a frame and then the way the frame attaches itself to it is what a hug is. Like when we saw the button without the padding is hugged, right? So it was hugged. Yeah, you see that the text and the buttons were touching each other. But once the padding was introduced, then the hug disappeared. Okay, so let's talk about the fill. So let's say for this element now, let me actually space this guys a little bit more so that we have some more spacing. Okay. I can delete this. So let's see this. All right. So now for this, I could say for my width, if you click on the arrow beside the width, you'll see we have fixed width, all content, fill container, and stuff like that. So for the fill, what happens is if I click on the fill now, you notice that it now tries as much as possible to fill up the space within. Okay, so you notice that it follows or it's trying to stretch. And even though it's trying to fill the container, right? It's not, uh, it's respecting the rules. There are some rules about auto layout, like I said, how the element should behave. And the auto layout in this frame has already given a padding and a gap size. So when this element is forced to fill, it has to still maintain this guy. That's why it says in red. And yeah, you can't get bigger than this. As long as these guys are here, you can't ride into them. So it's kind of a protective procedure for these other elements. Right, so this is what the fill does. So if I reduce the element, you see, it reduces that and it stretches that, but at the same time, it's also still maintaining the space between these two guys. Okay, so it doesn't squeeze them, it just keeps maintaining that side. So that's very good for responsiveness. So that's the fill container, and that's on the width. So what about this one? Now, if I want to do fill height, will be adaptable. So now I can fill container with this guy. Now what happens? Fill container. Okay, it's kind of jumps there because the frame itself is transparent. So let me make the frame red instead, or some red. Okay. So what happens is it fills the height container. Okay, but so anytime I go, it's as long as the container, but it's not going to change its width because it's just a fixed width. Okay, so this one is having a squeezing uh, problem. It's telling you, oh, okay, yeah, I'm always going to be expanding, but this guy now is feel the height, so he's now determining a new set of laws that's going on for it. Okay, so that's how the elements behave. Okay, so that's what the fixed height is. That's what the field height is. For this frame, did I have a padding? Yeah, I had a small padding. Okay. So this guy now is this frame now is saying it's gonna feel, but it's not gonna change the width. Okay, if I want to feel and change the width now, I can say okay, fill container also fill the height. Okay, then change the added fill color to this guy and just use this color. Okay. All right. Okay, so now he's filling both the height and the width. So as it's going, it's expanding. As it's reducing, it's coming down. So that's what the fill and fixed. The fixed just keeps it, um, maintains the sizing without changing anything. So let's say, for instance, now I do Control D for this, and that's one cool thing about auto layouts, right? When you change the when you create an auto layout, you want to make another copy, you just Control D and to shift it in. So now I want to put this one here. Because of the rule of the way the auto layout is laid up, we can use the left and right arrows to move things within the frame. So I can just move left and I've shifted this guy here now. And I can change him to be hog until which is kind of like fixed. And so let's say this one's fixed as well. So what happens is when I adjust the frame, nothing happens to this element. nothing happens to it. It just stays where it is. So it's kind of fixed at its point there. So I leave that as hog generally. So fixed and hog generally almost the same thing. So all right. Okay, so that's it about the stretching and the behavioral pattern built layout. So let's come back to this design we're working on. And I wanted to frame up all these guys. So because they are rectangles, you when you frame them, the rectangle remains, but then are putting an empty frame. Okay. So another thing you can do is create frames with the design. So what I'm going to do is I will just get rid of this or take a frame. This is a frame. Draw a frame that's exactly that size. Okay. I'll leave the rectangle inside. Uh, I give the frame same color of the first rectangle. No, I have yet added it. Okay. Uh, this is a bit smaller and 90% sliced. Okay. Then for this one, same because this is what happens if I click frame selection, right? This frame and rectangle is still there, but the frame itself has to be that color. So I will have to do that and remove that color. And do the same thing here, frame selection, change the frame color to that color, frame selection, and now change the add a fill and change the frame to that color, to that one, that's it. Okay, same. So what happens within them is if I select all these frames, these three frames, yeah, all frames, and I put them in an AutoLayout. Maybe these were images, okay, and I want to swap the images somewhere in my design. I could just select one of the frames, okay, so maybe like this frame, and use my left arrow to shift it to the left, or a right arrow to shift it to the right, change them. Yeah. Probably I want to duplicate this, and as well Control D, and it will make it duplicate, maintaining the spacing of this guys. So very, very super cool for creating carousels. Now look at the rule in the auto layout. Now let's say I want to just drag this guy and bring it close here. It just shifts and creates that same spacing. Okay, it doesn't allow for unordered arrangement. That's because when you create the auto layout, it sets a fixed, when you create the auto layout, it sets fixed width and height, give a gap, padding for that frame. The auto layout kind of frames everything again into another frame, but with rules saying that, oh, okay, now you can't go beyond this, you can't do this. Like right now, I can't pick this frame and say I want to put it here. It's not gonna work. Yeah, I can't say let me shift it a little bit closer. It's not going to work because there is a law that says these gaps must be maintained. Okay, so that's a cool one for the auto layout. It helps in maintaining an order. Right. So for carousel building, or let's say category, rigid category for your pages, it's a very perfect one to use. And right, so now we're talking about the behavioral pattern of the frames, okay? And I say I clicked it like not layout for this guy, okay? And I told it for the width, just like we did for this guy, I can tell it to adapt to the desktop, and have the stretchiness of this. So I can do all that, and then so if I put on the auto layout for this guy, for instance, change him back to normal freeform flow, just adapt everything back. I'll probably wrap this. I think it's here. It's kind of messed up my design, sort of. Okay, so everything is just act to the left, you know. So now, if this guy is set to field container, all right, is set to field container, um, just wrap those guys down. Set to field container, you see it's filling the whole top side, okay. But once there's spacing for the other ones, they jump up, they jump right up in there. Okay, so I could also set this one to be fixed, okay, or made the same way. And so, but generally, what the AutoLayout does is the same thing that the Hogs is doing, but now it's making it a little bit more easy to behave. So let's see a practical example here. So let me just delete everything in here. Okay, I'll remove the AutoLayout. So let's imagine I have a carousel I want to create right here. Suppose let me fill it an image. Okay, so I'm going to upload an image. Let's just use one of these images. Why not? Good fruits here. Okay, so now this is a frame, and I'm going to add an auto layout to that frame. Okay, and I'm going to tell it to have to hug. Yeah, basically it's going to hug. So, and this one, I'm going to put this on the auto layout. Okay, but I'm going to let it fall out this way. So now that they are both auto layouts, notice that when the main frame isn't an auto layout, this guy doesn't behave the way it should behave. All right, so now that they're both auto layouts, with the auto layout setup, I can look for the major one cases and just centralize. Okay. So at this point, I can see as I am adjusting, you will see the way the frame is adjusting the image very nicely. And that's because this frame, I told it field container, right? So that's the cool stuff that happens with responsiveness. So as I'm adjusting it, I don't need to adjust the picture because once it gets size, it's also making the image flexible for either tablet or mobile. Okay, so very, very nice be done there. And I can add uh, other frames here. So right now, um, maybe this would be, let's say, a card or some cards. And then inside this card, I can draw, let's see, let me make the frame, let me give it a color. Let me give this frame, well, let's just add an effect to it, like a drop shadow, so that easy to see. Okay, so something like this, right? And this is going to be within the card. I hold control to select. Remember, I hold control to select. So get an image here, and from here I pick. Let's see something else. Maybe theory. That. Then I will apply some text in here, and just write some random text here. Let's reduce the text size. It's quite large. And then I'll use program Ipsum and add some auto-generated text there. Okay. And then probably create a button, the call to action. Something. Let me see. So all the things I'm creating is just within. Okay, let me zoom in. So typically, when it comes to all this, I talk about this in different trainings, so I'll deal with it here. This would be our basic read more. Let's just see. So let's just align these two together. let's just align them together. For this, I will make it light. Button, I think the button should be blue. Yep. So let's just make a blue button, white text. Okay, and just group both of them. So Ctrl G to group them. And these guys, I can almost adjust them, separate them so that it's already many buttons. Okay, so this frame, I can bring this frame somewhere like this. Yeah. Okay, so just a basic card like stuff. Shift this here. Oh, all right. Forgot there's another layer working to their rules. Okay. So now I want to make a duplicate of this, all right? And I could hold Alt and drag and make it so that was also going to fall it back down because the law that this layout is following is going vertically, it's not going horizontally. Okay, so I could select this. I'll create an auto layout with this. Okay, and just no, on them all. Just keep them this way. Yeah, this would be nice. And then I can make uh, this is fixed, right? There's filling the container. Okay, no problem with that. Let me just make the flow stuff. And then for this guy, I will do that same. No, I need this flow. Yeah, the flow layout. And for this one, create another copy of it. So this is two cards, let's say, and I want them to have the spacing. So I create an auto layout with these guys. And now I can select one of these frames and make a duplicate of it, Ctrl D, and then mix it of that. So I can go in now into the image of one and change that image to something else. So this was a design. Okay, so first of all, let's make go all the options we have here. So I want the width of each frame. This is 132, 132, 132, right? So whenever the page is shrinking or this frame shrinks, this frame shrinks, I want it to have the minimum size of that 1332 here. So whenever this gets smaller, one should drop, the one should adapt. Well, let me add a padding to the boundaries. I want to, well, there's not much padding, both of them. Just make a little bit more padding. Nice. Okay, then for this frame now, I want to set minimum. Yeah, width is 332, right? So minimum, add minimum width for all of them. When it gets more after each, okay, adjust. And I also want them to feel well. So this is what happens when it gets when you select the frame, you use it. So once they get smaller than 350, they adjust or they adapt. You know, that's the concept I'm looking for here to get the minimum width of 350 and letting them feel the container. That's very important to get them to feel the container. Right. And so when you adjust this frame, right, frame is just fixed, it's not filling. Yeah, guys, up here. So if you adjust, you see that the elements are adapting based on that. Okay? They are looking cool. So now, if I take this whole page and I squish it, you can see yes, adapting like it's smaller. Yes, yes. So this would be like for my iPad version. This would be this button here. That's how it would look like. And then when I get to the mobile view, this is how it will look like. And then I'm going to scroll through. So it makes the elements adaptable and adjustable while you are squeezing and increasing their sizes or reducing their size. So super helpful when creating design that will be adaptive. So from here on, you can do anything else. You could add change the size of the text, size of the buttons, change the pictures. But important thing is creating the auto layouts and then giving them the commands that you command what to do, having a minimum size and other stuff will make all the elements react and act in one phase, in one behavior. So I don't need to reduce this and come and reduce this picture and reduce this picture. I already know that this is how it had. If I want to see, I take like on the phone, I reduce it then and show you this is the one that it's going to look like on the phone view or mobile view. So if I wanted to make this a little bit more like two, okay, what I would have done since the minimum value here, the minimum was right there too, just to have reduced it a little bit more. So let's get back and see how we can achieve that. So right now, these frames, we have them at this size. Okay, there is a padding for them so that the elements it's those who don't want the padding is fine, but padding is suspect. It will be nicer. Okay, now I can go into the main frame, right, and adjust the gap. The gap is actually adding some nonsense stuff to it. So like I said, okay, let's add padding in. Okay, is the element still got the minimum width? Okay, so all that thing is it just makes sure at least that can have some space in here, not that it's stretched throughout the design. So in the padding here, this frame, come in here and increase the padding if I want to make it more or have more elements in there. But if I don't want to just increase the padding, maybe I also want to reduce the size of the frame. So for the minimum width value, so I come here and say the minimum is 320, right? So we say let's have minimum width of let's say 340. So by the time I get this, which is 1440, yep. So by the time I get this page to reduce at iPad size, I can still, I mean, 340 is still quite small. And it just all boils down to how I'm going to adjust the pattern. And if I do want them to be side by side as well, and just make do with some of the spacing. So if I take out the pattern, run it, and this point here, reduce size of each frame, or maybe add maximum size as well. So do that. So with all the frames, I've added a minimum and also add a maximum. So a minimum of 2 right. Okay. And also come in here and add a max. So yes, 332 is fine, but don't go beyond 332. Okay. So now gives it this sturdy structure. It says, hey, don't get beyond this point here. right? So green, um, yeah, just make use adding it as cool. All right, so now when I get here, let's use okay, I can't extend I can grab larger than that. That's really lets me. That's one with 04. So the jobs up to 400 and then I can really see what it looks like. So it doesn't get fatter than 400. Okay, so that's generally it. So as you're going, you just experiment, try out all you can. Then see you in the next